It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Starting with this edition of the morning show, of course, telling you about the outrage around the world following yesterday's death in prison of Russia's most significant opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. Seen as President Vladimir Putin's most vociferous critic, Navalny was serving a 19-year jail term for offenses widely considered politically motivated. He was moved to an Arctic penal colony, considered one of the toughest jails, late last year. The prison service said he had felt unwell after a walk. U.S. President Joe Biden has blamed Putin for his death.
You've probably all seen the terrible news coming in today. I thought for a long time whether I should come out here or fly straight to my children. But then I thought about what Alexei would do in my place. And I'm sure he'd be here, he'd be on this stage. I don't know whether or not to believe the news, the terrible news that we only get from government sources in Russia, because for years, and you all know this, we can't believe Putin and Putin's government. They are always lying. But if this is true, I want Putin and all of his entourage, Putin's friends and his government to know that they will be held accountable for what they have done to our country, to my family and to my husband. And that day will come very soon. And I want to call on the entire world community, everyone in this room and people around the world, that we come together to unite and defeat this evil, defeat the horrific regime that is now in Russia. And this regime and Vladimir Putin must be held personally responsible for all the terrible things that they have been doing to my country, to our country Russia, in recent years.
За то, что они сделали с нашей страной, наверное.
You know, like millions of people around the world, I'm literally both not surprised and outraged by the news. Reported death of Alexei Navalny. He bravely stood up to the corruption, the violence, and all the bad things that the Putin government was doing. In response, Putin had him poisoned, he had him arrested, he had him prosecuted for fabricated crimes. He sentenced him to prison. He was held in isolation. Even all that didn't stop him from calling out Putin's lies. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And he could have lived safely in exile after the assassination attempt on him in 2020, which nearly killed him, I might add. But he was traveling outside the country at the time. Instead, he returned to Russia. Knowing he'd likely be imprisoned or even killed if he continued his work. But he did it anyway, because he believed so deeply in his country, in Russia. Reports of his death, if they're true, and I have no reason to believe they're not, Russian authorities are going to tell their own story. But make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Putin is responsible.
20 years of rootlessness. That was a story I was reading in The Guardian this morning, just, making reference to how, we've seen over and over again Putin, how he silenced his opponents, from poisonings to shootings to falls, now, even plane crashes. The Kremlin, of course, has been accused of many numerous lethal attacks. And what really stands out there, what really sends a strong message is U.S. President Joe Biden saying that he is contemplating steps to punish Moscow. You could hear him there blaming Vladimir Putin and his thugs for the death of this Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. Very, very strong opposition, very strong voice against the Russian president. And, he said it there, said he was not surprised that this has happened. He was outraged by the death. And a lot of world leaders have come out to say that, even though this person was the fiercest advocate for Russian democracy, somehow, somewhere, he was able to be arrested and taken into one of the toughest prisons in Russia. And, we thought that it was going to end there, but now we're seeing that, Putin is not, based off of the information that is out there, who else to put it out than the US president, to show that this is somebody that does not forget. If you come for him, he will come for you in more ways than one. But I think what's really important here is now looking at it on a holistic view. How exactly are world leaders going to put an end to this? Because someone's reign of terror can't just go on, for that long. What exactly are the world leaders going to do to make sure that, hopefully this is the last death that we're seeing on Putin's calendar?
Yeah, Alexei, you want to, jump on it? Yeah, that's
okay,
fine.
Well, world leaders, I don't expect anything from world leaders. I expect more talk. Putin has killed dissidents on UK soil. He has poisoned people with, allegedly, but with uranium on UK soil. Yeah. So this is even beyond a political prisoner dying in Russian jails. There have been Russian dissidents, Russian people who have left the state, people who have spoken out against Putin, who have died in Turkey, in the Middle East, I'm sure in America. So I don't expect much actual concrete action from world leaders. And again, this is all in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. This is also in the context of Putin coming out recently and saying that he would like Joe Biden to be president, something that I'm sure Joe Biden was not very happy about. And, Navalny was a hero to the common man in Russia, to people who felt that he was a strong voice for the opposition. He had a very stylistic way to which he attacked Putin. He chose to go back to the country, as Biden said, even though he knew he would likely be arrested and likely be killed. Yeah. So this is a man who truly believed in his country, truly believed in the freedoms he spoke about, and was very much outspoken, knowing that there could be a cost to his life. And it's very sad to see that he has gone. Honestly, I was surprised he lasted this long. But it's really a shame, and I don't expect much I don't expect concrete sanctions coming out against Putin, but I really do hope that Navalny's family, his wife, his children find some peace and some comfort, and that he's not forgotten and his cause is not forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Neither do I. I don't expect that there will be anything more than what has been said, to the camera from world leaders. When you have the fiercest critic of a regime that is so brutal, that is considered to be, that unfeeling, dying all of a sudden in prison, of course, people will point accusing fingers naturally. The sadness for me is that he was not even allowed to serve out his term, in jail. And like Adisu has said, that he lasted this long is probably a big deal. I hope that the cause that he fought for, the cause that he believed in, Navalny, to have democracy entrenched in Russia will be something that other voices, other younger voices, male, female, Russians, will, queue behind and tie to, so that we do not have just one man for decades constituting himself as a form of nuisance to the entire world and to the entire region. But having said that, I'm not a big fan of the sort of rhetorics that we hear all the time, especially from the American president and American government. Yes, make your voice known, make your views, heard, but that's another territory. And when you use language like, we'll find a way to make him pay for it or to deal with him, you are beginning to sound like the same person that you're trying, to correct. So that's the thing. But of course, we can't divorce what has happened from the international politics, the Russia-Ukrainian war, You can't divorce, this even from the latest interview by that gentleman, the former journalist with Fox. What's his name again?
Tucker Carlson?
Tucker Carlson,
Yeah.
and all the, something that looks like propaganda, for Russia, all the focus on that metro.
And it's an election year in America,
Exactly,
so
in
Biden does
November.
not want to sound, he doesn't want to sound soft on Putin, that's for sure. So he's using very American terminologies and we'll get him.
Absolutely.
Putin has come and said, I don't mind if he wins. He has to.
I probably prefer that he wins.
Yes.
And
that's not a very nice position to be put in. So
it's a deadly nod, against Biden. But again, leaders of the world must be held accountable, especially where lives of other people, are concerned. And I hope that, voices against that sort of madness will not relent. And the gentleman Putin will just have to watch it. It's one too many coming from that hand. All right, we'll proceed. Nigeria continues to mourn the death of co-founder of Access Bank and erstwhile group CEO of Access Holdings, Herbert Wigwe, who died in a helicopter crash in California on Friday, February the 9th. Also killed in the crash were his wife, Chizoba Wigwe, son Chizi Wigwe, and former chairman of NJX Group, Bamufin Abimbola Ogunbanjo. On February 13th, Access Holdings appointed Bolaji Agbede as acting group chief executive officer. In this report, Arise business anchor Bonson Omofaye captures some of the biggest strides of the late Herbert Wigwe.
As we move into the next 5 years, we will come and share with you at a later date our plans, but we have transited from being the narrow banking structure that we had before into one that has now a payment structure, that has an insurance platform, that will look at pensions, all right, and also digital banking, etc. The whole idea is that we're going to create a massive ecosystem for every Nigerian to plug into if you want to do and you want to create great opportunities for yourself. This maiden outing of Access Holdings trading under Access Corporation for us is one that we don't take for granted, and we've come again to share with you the fact that you will be supporting one of the largest corporates in this country, not just in this country, but across the continent, and we will do you proud.
2 years into that market briefing at the Nigerian Exchange, April 2022, Herbert Wigwe, the head of one of Nigeria's iconic and blue-chip financial services supermarket known as Access Corp, is no more. The tragic death of Herbert, alongside his wife and son in the United States on Friday the 9th of February, was a rude shock to the Nigerian banking sector, the financial markets, and the entire country. With the relevant education and academic knowledge in his back pockets, Herbert Wigwe dived into the world of banking and finance earlier in life, as he also piled up professional qualifications for the journey ahead. Cutting his teeth at Coopers and Lybrand, Herbert stepped into the world of banking at Capital Merchant Bank, then to GT Bank, where he and his bosom partner and friend, Ig Mokwede, launched one of the most ambitious and daring corporate takeover of Nigeria's banking history. That was at the start of the 2000 era. The late Herbert Wigwe was a real entrepreneur, clothed in the garb of a banker, whose visions and goals are set far beyond the shores of Nigeria. But the starting point for Wigwe and his team at Access Bank was to reform the lender and transform it into a 21st century financial powerhouse. Over the past few years, Herbert Wigwe launched Access Bank into an aggressive frontier Africa and global expansion that grabbed the headlines. As the new year 2024 kicks in, Herbert Wigwe was set to add yet another mega deal into the Access Bank Hall of Fame. It is the Standard Chartered UK Bank deal. Herbert Wigwe will be fondly remembered as a gentleman and a Nigerian banker of repute. His demise has opened a floodgate of encomiums on his life and times from around the world. Herbert Wigwe has left behind several legacies in banking, finance, investments, and even international sports, such as the Access Bank Annual Marathon. But as the cold hands of death snatched away Herbert Wigwe, the new Wigwe University, preparing for its 2024-2025 session, is another profound testimony to a man of vision and passion, whose name goes into the annals of Nigeria's greatest men on Broad Street.
I will tell you something about being fearless. That powerful state of mind where you refuse to be constrained by the consciousness of your limitations, where you face your challenges as an adventurous quest, focusing on the joys of winning rather than the fear of losing.
Bosin Omofaye, Arise News.
I could not have foreseen the great future that is now Access Corporation.
A moving tribute there by our own Bosin Omofaye for the fearless man, Herbert Wigwe. The tributes have, they've been coming ceaselessly since last Saturday, and Shaitan and I also had, some kind words to share about him last Sunday, which was the first day after the news broke last Saturday. It's such a major, huge tragedy, to befall any family, to even befall any nation. Herbert Wigwe was a different man to different, a great man to different people. In the banking world, in the arts world, in the sports world, the financial sector, he represented, a greatness to many people. And I know that at this world, this is the first time that we're having you on the show since then, and you knew him quite closely, didn't you?
I knew Chizzy Wigwe quite closely. Chizzy Wigwe was one of the best people I have ever met in my life. I think one of the most painful things is that he didn't get to complete his own legacy. Chizzy was born in January of '95. He was very young.
24, right?
No, 28.
28, sorry.
Yes, and he was a fiercely protective, fiercely loyal brother. First, he was Herbert's first child and first son. He was very protective over his siblings, Tochi and Hannah and David and Kachi, the baby who he adored so much. He was very intelligent. He went to Georgetown, he went to King's Canterbury, he was working for AFC at the time where he died, and I know that the people in AFC miss him very dearly as well. His friends miss him very dearly. Chizzy was a great, and it's very sad that people didn't really get to know that, the public didn't get to know that. Herbert's death is an absolute tragedy for the country, and Chizoba's death is an absolute tragedy for the country. But also Chizzy's death is a personal tragedy for a lot of people. But I think Nigeria lost someone who was on his way to making a name for himself, beyond just being Herbert Wigwe's son. And so I think that for me is yeah.
Absolutely. You're very correct about, mentioning even the wife, Ijoma Nwogogo, the former editor and of This Day and the former MD of Arise, penned a rather fantastic, moving tribute, especially on the wife. They were friends, and I thought that was brilliant. That was so, moving, because a lot of people didn't
really know her as much.
So
that was very, was one of the things I was going to touch on, because, she had spoken about Chizzy, but from that article, like you said, the former MD of Arise, Ejoma Nwugu, really just broke down who she was.
Yeah.
And there was a part in her write-up where she said, there was an interview that our colleague Ojiokwe had done where they asked him, what's your most prized possession? And without skipping a heartbeat, he said, my wife. She's the best thing that has happened to me. And, a lot of people, see the man, but of course they don't see the woman who is holding the fort down at home. And, just to see that, the father and the mother and the first son, just like Bosin has said, just snatched away by the cold hands of death, really, really just has the entire world, not even just Nigeria, the entire world has, stood still just to pay their respects to this family. And of course, the plans for Wigwe University, they released a statement, I think it was the head of the Board of Trustees, Professor Fabian Ajogu, saying that they're going to do everything possible to emphasize that the potential students, assuring stakeholders, faculty and staff that Wigwe University remains dedicated to realizing Herbert Wigwe's dreams and aspirations for the institution. So, a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with a lot of his, legacies that have been left behind, but I'm very hopeful, and I do believe that his passing is not going to be the end of it, but in fact it's going to reignite that passion that for those that have been left behind to push his legacy even forward. And I really, I empathize with his family that has been left behind. He's still, his parents
Especially
are still...
his aged parents.
His aged parents are still alive, and of course the three children who are now without... any parents. Or they are even their older sibling.
You're correct. Our condolences, condolences to the family. I recall, of course, that Wigwe's dad was a former Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, and you can see why he's such a darling, to the media. Our condolences again to the entire Wigwe family and to the kids, the three. And the Ogumba family. Yes, Ogumba Angel's family.
Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for that.
Thanks for reminding us. Thank you indeed. All right, we'll proceed. I think that is where you like to take the next one.
Okay. President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday conferred on players and officials of the Nigerian Super Eagles with the national honor of Member of the Order of the Niger, MON, following their dazzling performance at the just concluded 2023 African Nations Cup. He also announced the donation of a flat and a plot of land to each of them, even as the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, immediately distributed forms for land allocation to each player at a yet-to-be-disclosed location. The Super Eagles refused to clinch the trophy at the 2024 African Cup of Nations after a 2-1 defeat by the host nation, Ivory Coast. Well, let's discuss this because Nyesom Wike is currently advertising in the newspapers for putting out notice, to foreign embassies and commissions that are apparently owing land rent. There are Nigerians who are unhoused. We have a housing problem, and the former Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, spoke about it recently. The problem of rent and etc. And in the midst of this, we're giving Super Eagles, I am so happy about what they did, particularly when they beat Bafana. When they beat the South Africans, it gave me so much joy. It lifted my spirits. However, I don't know about giving them these titles or giving them land. I think we should continue to support our athletes, yes, but maybe we should also consider trying to grow more athletes at home. A lot of our Super Eagles are actually Nigerians who have been trained abroad. We have Nwabali, who is obviously a homegrown talent, but a lot of our I want to say, I don't think the back for the defense, I think most of them were born and raised abroad or trained abroad. So maybe we should think about developing our talent at home, and those funds that they're using to celebrate the Eagles, yes. celebrate them, do a rally, do a welcome home party, but I'm not sure about giving them plots of land and giving them a flat as well. I think we should be more serious when it comes to how we want to develop our sports going forward. And I also think we should be more serious when it comes to how we want to reward our athletes. Because reward is actually in continuing to pay their salaries on time. It's to making sure the training camps are well fitted, they have the right kits, they have the right transportation. It's not in giving them plot of land and flats. And I really do not like when we do these short-term fancy, oh, this is a nice thing to announce, this is a nice thing to do. No, what we need is sustained reward. Actual reward for hard work is making sure their facilities are good, their uniforms are good, their salaries are paid, and that is across board, not just the men's national team, but the women's national team. Not just with football, but with basketball as well. So
I remember how I felt. I think I even ran into you at the viewing center. That first half, we were so hyped. As soon as we went on break, everybody was happy, 1-0. But we came back from that into that second half, and just before our eyes, the trophy was, we did get the silver trophy, but we were really gunning for that gold win, especially after what happened at the Grammys. We really needed a win. And I agree with you, Adesua. I think, honoring them with the member of the Order of the Niger, that's great. They can become, they can have that. But the reward of giving them, the plot of land and giving them flats, especially now at a time where Nigerians are just, managing to, have, their 3 square meals in a day, just feels a bit insensitive because they don't necessarily need it. But outside of that, what really stood out for me following this win was the heavy criticism that Alex Iwobi came under. Of course, about 80 minutes into the game, there was a chance for him to score and he didn't. And what we saw was him coming under that heavy criticism and then it now morphing into cyber abuse. We did see the sports minister have a sit down with him. He had to, he deleted all of the photos on his Instagram handle. He blocked the comment section on his Instagram. He even went at the event when he was meeting with the sports minister, you could tell that maybe he had been crying or he hadn't slept well. When we as a nation don't get what we want, sometimes we can be very harsh on our players and on those that go out to represent us, forgetting that there are other elements that play into it. Of course, congratulations to us, but I just wanted to touch on that because cyberbullying, not everybody can handle it. He's been able to handle it. He's probably, I don't say used to it, but because he's a public figure, he might understand it, but not everybody gets it. So it was, I just wanted to just highlight on that fact that sometimes Nigerians, let's be calming down. Don't just go online and attack your players. But once again, they brought the silver medal home. So I'm glad AFCON, we really held our own for those couple of weeks where we were in Abidjan.
Well, I'm not for cyber. I'm not for cyberbullying, but I don't also think that it's a peculiarly Nigerian thing. All these guys play abroad, and we know how heavy the media intrusion can be, in their lives. Heavy thing, especially when you miss a penalty or you perform below par. I think they should just learn to develop thick skin, against what they call trolling and stuff like that. If you are going to have to be going away after winning the silver with a plot of land in Abuja or a house, if you're not going to play like satisfactorily, expect that people will show some displeasure. I'm against trolling, I'm against cyberbullying, but they're used to it, frankly speaking. As to the reward thing, I'm sure that the civil servants and the people around the president picked that from former President Shehu Shagari 40 years ago. I think it was in 1980 when Nigeria first won its AFCON 3-0 against Algeria, I believe. And all the Segun Odegba, Mudashiru Lawal, all the great guys who played in that thing. Of course, everybody got a flat in Abuja, got all these titles, MON and things like that. I think that thing has continued in a rather in a rather uninteresting way. I don't get the point. What would you have given them if they had won the AFCON, for example? Why don't we take a cue from Côte d'Ivoire that won the AFCON, or South Africa, or even DRC Congo, who basically said that because we made so much money from coming first or second or third, or fourth, you made money from FIFA. Let's give some cash rewards to some of these players. But then dashing them houses, dashing them. How many of such lands and properties in Abuja have you given to people who have done very well, in other spheres of life, as Nigerians elsewhere? I mean, I think this nonsense should stop. They are doing their job. These are not ordinary guys. They are rich. They are well paid. And in any case, the president released 12 billion to NFF before the match so that nobody will worry about they're not paying our allowances and things. So if you've gotten your allowances and you're well taken care of, why are we dashing you a house? I don't think it's necessary, and I think that Nigeria should do better
next time. I'm very glad that there were no reports of anybody, passing away, because it was a very tense match, and what we had seen was in the semi-final, about 5 people had lost their lives, so I'm very glad that that was not the situation, of course, for the AFCON finals. But let's move on now to our very next story. Nigeria's January 2024 inflation rate has increased to 29.90% relative to the December 2023 inflation rate, which was 28.92%. Looking at the movement, the January 2024 headline inflation rate showed an increase of 0.98 percentage points when compared to the December 2023 headline inflation rate. Similarly, on a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 8.08 percentage points higher compared to the rate recorded in January 2023, which was 21.82%. Food prices also rose sharply. The prices of staples like bread and yam rose as many shoppers sought more cost-effective alternatives to feed. January's food inflation figure was 35.41%. Well, this is definitely a reflection of what we are seeing right now in Nigeria, and I can say for a fact that this inflation is touching everybody. Somehow I was in the market like 3 days ago, and there was a situation I'd heard about it before, but this was my first time seeing it, where they were actually selling like not tubers of yam, but slices of yam, because it's become so expensive. Now you're seeing a tuber of yam
buy a whole tuber.
Yes, to buy a whole tuber for a family. And that just really puts into perspective how bad it has become. And I know that a state of emergency was declared on food and security. But that state of emergency hasn't necessarily reflected in results.
It hasn't reflected
at all. And I was reading a statement that the governor of, I think, Kwara State, Abdulrazak, put out, where he said that, even when the food in Nigeria is still considerably cheaper when you relate it to other African countries. And he even said right now, Nigeria is even responsible for feeding other countries. And that just, I know you want to come in, but that just strikes me as odd. Adesowa, come in
Kwara State has the second highest food inflation rate in the country. It's over 40%. I believe it's 40.9% food inflation in Kwara, the state he governs. 40% inflation. That's not just double-digit inflation. That is an insane amount. There are people now in his state who are eating throwaway rice that people used to feed fish in the past. Throwaway rice that they did not use to sell for consumption to human beings. Food that they used to raise poultry or fish or cows is now what people are actually trying to buy in the markets because they cannot afford normal rice. So it is actually very insulting. I hope I didn't know, I missed the statement, but I can't. It's hard to fathom, and we're dealing right now food crisis. Honestly, for me, this all begins with Buhari. This all begins with Buhari. Yes, we need more from the Tinubu administration, but we also have to be honest that this began with Buhari. This began when they did not do anything with the floodings. The Minister of Agriculture said that they did not prepare for wet season cultivation in the last administration, so they have nothing to harvest. So, when we talk about our land borders, when we talk about our currency is so low that now our food is cheaper for the countries who are our neighboring countries now. So our food is also leaving. Our food is also leaving. So this is the reality of the situation, is that there's so many things that especially when it comes to food inflation, because that 3 square meals, people are people are struggling to have 2 or 1.
Yeah.
People are genuinely hungry, and the numbers show us this. And it's, you know, it's worse in certain areas of the country. Kogi State has 44%.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is even what you see in Niger State, where the governor is saying that where we are now, no truck with food items should leave our state. If you're coming from any part of the north and you're trying to go down south, we will stop you. And we are now seeing videos. As at last night, we are seeing clips on social media where trucks are actually being stopped, you know, from bringing, you know, food items, you know, down to. I think that, yes, the Buhari administration might have his own troubles as to what it didn't do right. But, I mean, this is the 9th month of a new government. Yes. You know, we will just have to do a lot more. This is what we've been experiencing since May 29. This is what we woke up to on the 1st of January, you know, 2024. This is where we are on this day of the Lord in February, 2024. And I think before we go on this, it is to say that beyond everything that we have been talking about, is to appeal to the consciences of those who are in power, so that they do not, so that it doesn't come across to people that they're just unfeeling. If you recall what used to be the folkloric song in political circles in the First and Second Republic, the Bamu Bamu Layu song. I don't know if you angels know about that song. Bamu Bamu Layu was what people were singing, that, you know, we are satisfied. We are full. We do not know if others are hungry. Bamu Bamu Layu, awa omo baby nkwomene kookan. Bamu Bamu Layu. And I think it was Professor Niyo Shundari that captured that nicely in 2005 in his play, The Man Who Walked Away. And it's to sound a note of warning to people in government, to people around power and authority, to say that you might be well off, you might be better off, you might be enjoying certain things that others are not enjoying. You might be singing in your heart that Bamu Bamu Layu, you're not aware if others are hungry. But hey, when you have a situation like that, you are preparing the ground for an uprising that we may not be able to deal with. And I think that beyond all the rhetoric that everybody is talking about, you know, release the grains, let's do this and that, let it sink in the hearts and minds of those who are in power and around power, that you might be better off, but consider others. And I'm talking governors, I'm talking local government chairmen, I'm talking political appointees, not just the president. Do a lot better, because people are genuinely hungry and the situation is getting desperate. We need to avoid the Bamu Bamu Layu syndrome. All right, that's all on the week that was.